Hi everyone and welcome back to my YouTube channel about aviation. Here you can find flight reviews, videos about travels, flight training, and interview with interesting people. This video is very special to me. I filmed this video in February 2021 with a friend of mine, Dave Fogarty. At that time, FAA does not allow him to post this video online, but now, 4 years later, I have permission from his wife, Jane, thank you Jane, to post this video. 2 days brought me back to this video now. The first one, August 6th, it's a birthday of David Fogarty, and August 18th is the date when we lost him. So this video is my tribute to him and memory about Dave Fogarty and about his passion to aviation. He lived with aviation, he dreamed about aviation, and he lived for aviation. He cannot live without flying. So enjoy this video and in the love and memory of Dave Fogarty. Hello Dave. I'm good. How are you doing? How are you?
Just finished. Good. How about yourself?
Excellent.
Coming along with this Skyhawk.
How far you moved?
Well, we've come pretty far in the last week. These restoration projects are always the same. You spend weeks working on the airplane, seemingly getting nowhere, and then all of a sudden, at the very end, it comes together. This aircraft started as a 1956 Skyhawk. This is the prototype design. So for 4 years they built this particular design from 1955 to 1959. And there are two very unique things about these models of aircraft. The first is the spring steel landing gear. This landing gear design was originally developed by a fellow named Steve Whitman, who was a very famous aircraft designer who built a series of racing planes in the 1930s. He developed a patent on this type of landing gear, which was very successful. And it was so successful that Cessna bought the patent rights from him and incorporated it into the design of their Cessna 170, 180, the 172.
Nice.
Years later, they went to a tubular main landing gear, which you can see very clearly on any of the retracting gear Cessnas. But the reason I mention this is that it's one of the attributes of this particular aircraft that makes it so desirable as a trainer, because it can take a tremendous amount of abuse from a student. I like these planes for the simple reason that they're very light and therefore they're very fast. And they're also very fuel efficient. They only have 37 gallons of fuel, which is essentially about 155 liters. But the power of the engine is only 145 horsepower. Although it doesn't carry a lot of fuel, it doesn't need a lot of fuel because the power output of the engine is very low. Now I'll just put it in System International units for you. 108 kilowatts is its power output. So in the case of this plane, we simply stripped everything and we've saved the frame, the aluminum and the steel. The rest of it is new. The engine was overhauled, the propeller is new, and every component in it is new. So when it's finished, it'll be essentially a brand new airplane.
What is the plan? You're going to sell it or you're going to use it?
No, I'm going to use it. My original intention was to teach my children how to fly. Most of them have expressed an interest in learning how to fly. So I thought, all right, I'll buy a training plane and teach them.
Okay.
And then, of course, I started thinking about the safety aspects. And it's like anything else in life. You see something and you say, well, we'll fix this. And then you look further and you say, well, we'll fix that. And since we fixed this and that, we'll fix the next thing. And before you know it, you fixed everything. And that's what we have here. It'll be okay in the end.
How long you spent on this project?
We've been on this airplane now for 4 months.
It's not bad.
No.
I thought it's like a year, maybe a year and a half project.
But of course, this isn't my only job, as you know.
And no one is flying right now? No one is a pilot?
My son is a pilot. About 2 years ago, he came to me and said, I'm on leave from the Army. I would like to learn how to fly. So I spent 14 days teaching him. And on day 15, he took a check ride with another examiner and passed.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's impressive.
He did very well with his training. I had one other young man that I trained like this who was a retired United States Air Force flight engineer. And I trained him about 6 years ago. And he was a 14-day student. On day 15, he took his check ride. About 2 months ago, he arrived in Miami and called me and said, I'm here, and I have good news. I just became a captain at Brickyard on the regional jet. He said to me, I can't believe this, Dave. You changed my life. I went from being a retired Air Force enlisted man to captain on the regional jet.
Nice.
So he's one of my poster children for overachievement. And that's part of the great satisfaction that you get is from being an instructor, which you know well. It's probably the most valuable and rewarding job that you could ever have because you change people's lives.
Yeah, we will talk about that actually.
Yes.
Your office is one of the best offices I ever seen.
It's the biggest office I can put in the hangar and still get an airplane in here. That's the problem.
No, it's a great office. I like it. So you spent all of your life in the airport.
Now, yeah, I had a full career as a field service engineer in the plastics industry. All of these tombstones that you see up on the hangar door are from my other life. So I traveled the world as a field service engineer building plastics factories. I put up plants on every continent with the exception of Antarctica and the North Pole.
And these plants is not an aviation business. It's separate, completely separate business, right?
Yeah, this is like my third life being in aviation, which I've done since I was a young boy. So I always had the airplanes as a parallel program to what I was doing.
Your mother was a pilot?
Correct.
And your dad?
Was in the United States Air Force in the 1950s. He was a pilot.
Okay.
My grandfather was a pilot in the 1930s. So I've kind of had three lives, actually.
So you saw the aviation in your life
since I was a young boy.
You're a young boy?
Right.
And when you got your first license? When you start flying?
I took my first flying lesson in July of 1969.
69.
I was at that time 12. I didn't really get serious about the flying until I was in my middle years. And I was thinking about the end of my career. What would I do when I retired? So I decided, okay, I should become a professional pilot. So I decided, all right, I'll go all the way and do everything. I'll become ATP rated, single, multi, seaplane. I'll get the flight instructor ratings. At one point I decided I'd like to be a DPE. I was told was next to impossible, which to me was just another way of saying,
I'll do it.
I'm throwing the gauntlet on the floor.
Yeah.
Go.
Go. Before we will go to DPE, you said you had the three lives. Which one was the first one?
Originally, I worked in my parents' plastics factory.
Plastic factory.
My father was the inventor of the dominant process for making polystyrene foam, which you know is styrofoam. Ultimately, I became a field service engineer for the company. So my job was to travel around the world and boundary span between our company and the customers. And that's how I ended up literally traveling the globe. So I did that for 35 years.
What is your second life?
I ran my dad's engineering company, and at one point the market began to become saturated with this technology worldwide. And my father came up with a revolutionary idea to improve the productivity of the basic process that all of these people use. And my brother said to him, look, all my life I've watched people steal your technology. We're not going to put this in the marketplace until we patent it. So we patented this technology in 55 different countries. And we didn't sell the technology, we licensed it. And this technology improved the productivity of the basic process by 65% with a very minimal investment. So I ran that technology licensing company for the family for a period of 20 years. So that was kind of my second life. So I had the manufacturing business that I was involved in from a young age forward. Then I worked the technology company and the engineering company. And I always flew, but recreationally. And then I decided about the age of, I don't know, maybe 40, I would become a professional pilot. I probably spent at that time maybe $300,000 getting trained. Tremendous amount of money even today.
It's tremendous amount of money.
But I decided I would have every rating. And I remember speaking to a flight school, a large flight school, and I said, I'm going to go from 0 to airline transport pilot, and I really don't care what it costs. That got them excited. I said, but here's the rub. I want you to assign the chief pilot to me exclusively. And we're going to do this together. They said, well, what's the goal? I said, every pilot rating, every instructor rating, and I'm going to become an A&P mechanic with inspection authorization. I'm going to build my own plane, and ultimately I'm going to become a DPE.
You knew about that in 40 years, when you had been 40.
They looked at me like it was crazy. And I could tell they were thinking, this is never going to happen.
Yeah, exactly what my word.
The day that I received my DPE designation, a fellow who was at the company at the time of my starting had risen to become a director of the company and told me, you know, at first I thought you were crazy, and after about 3 months I realized he's going to do all of that. And so I went in to visit him literally the day after I received my designation, and he smiled, shook my hand. He said, I never had any doubt that you would achieve this goal. And truthfully, it was one of the happiest days of my life because it took a tremendous amount of effort to do it. And there were many moments where I thought, this is never going to happen. But I guess I was just stubborn enough to stay with it. And this is what I tell the young people today. Look, you can have anything you want, but you've got to be willing to give something else up. It might be time, it might be money, it might be a combination of that, but if you're willing to do the work and you're willing to invest in yourself, you can become a multi-engine airline transport pilot for land planes, or a multi-engine seaplane airline transport pilot. You just have to be willing to do the work. It's not enough to say, I want it. You have to really want it and really work at it.
Invest the time and money.
Right.
What was the flight school you've been training?
It was American Flyers,
American
actually.
Flyers? It was my suggestion. It was American Flyers, probably.
My family business was in the state of Massachusetts, the manufacturing companies. And over time, my father had 3 different factories in that state producing polystyrene foam. And at one point, he was the 2nd or 3rd largest producer of those products in the United States. Ultimately, they sold the manufacturing businesses, concentrated on the engineering business, and decided to relocate to Florida. And little by little, all of the kids ultimately ended up here. So I came down to Florida to work in the family engineering business and then build the technology licensing company. So when I decided to become a professional pilot, I surveyed all the flight schools from Orlando to Key West, north and south, east and west. And at that time, American Flyers was, in my estimation, the best choice. They had good curriculum, they were nationally known, they were operating under Part 141, and what was attractive to me was a known curriculum that would allow me to have an unusual schedule. I could go to Europe, work on a job for 2 or 3 weeks,
and then
come back, go back to the flight school, pick up right where I left off. So although it took longer because of the disruption of the business, because of the professionalism of that company and the organization, I ultimately was able to achieve my goal. So I'll always be indebted to them because they were really an excellent supplier. And quite frankly, I see the same attributes in your school now that I saw in Flyers then. You're doing the same kind of work. You have a 141 curriculum, you've built a good team, you have a nice fleet of aircraft, they're well maintained, the instructors are very good. So the product that you have is certainly competitive with the American Flyers people, without question.
Thank you.
It's every bit as good.
What happens after American Flyers? So you got your commercial pilot license, you've got your multi-engine, you've got your CFI, II, MEI.
Right.
What happens next? You became the instructor at American Flyers?
Now my problem is I need to accumulate hours. So
there's still problem for everybody.
For everybody.
It's still problem for everybody.
There I am, I'm a 350-hour commercial pilot wonder with very little experience.
Okay.
And all of it purchased. So fortunately for me, my brother-in-law was an aircraft owner and had achieved ATP status himself, had been flying for 25 or 30 years, and he was very busy working for an airline and could not fly his own airplane. Mm-hmm. So he said to me, look, why don't I leave my airplane with you and you fly it and accumulate the hours, and we'll fly together as much as we can. So we went to Alaska, we flew to the West Coast, we flew to Canada, we flew all over the United States.
What was the plane?
Skylane RG, a Cessna
182
RG, which would cruise at 150 knots, burning 12 to 14 gallons an hour. The sweet spot for it is 7,000 to 9,000 feet, roughly. And we literally would just take off and go. He was living in Washington, D.C., and I'd go up to Washington, we'd get in his airplane, and then fly to New Mexico, or fly to Los Angeles, or fly to Seattle.
This is how you build your hours?
Yes.
Okay.
Flying small, light general aviation aircraft across frontal weather all over North America.
Okay, you got your 1,500 hours on a Skylane. What next?
Well, in my particular case, the ATP at that time only required 1,200 hours.
Okay.
So the moment I was eligible to take the ATP tests, I decided I would take the single-engine ATP, and then almost immediately thereafter the multi-engine ATP.
Okay.
And then I thought, you know, probably I should become a mechanic now. It should be easy because of all of my engineering experience. Mm-hmm. And that was an eye-opening, rude awakening, because these flying machines are completely different than the industrial machinery that I designed for the plastics industry. What started out to be something that I thought would be relatively easy and quick turned into a 7-year journey from start to finish. And I was under the mistaken impression that this would be like my university training. Mm-hmm. You go to school for a certain period of time, you take examinations along the way. When you finish, you receive a diploma, and you are fill in the blank. It's quite different in the maintenance world of aircraft. Mm-hmm. The reality is, essentially, you go into an apprenticeship phase where you need to log, depending upon what ratings you want. Let's say you want the airframe and the power plant rating. You've got to log 3,000 contact hours of full-time work under the direction of an A&P, or better yet, an A&P with inspection authorization. The airport that I had based myself at for 30 years had a plethora of maintenance operations, repair stations for engines, propellers, a fabric shop, a paint shop, everything you could imagine that you need to maintain these machines. So by then I had made enough money and had enough control over my schedule that I approached several owners of these businesses and said, look, I want to be your intern. I don't want to be paid. I don't expect to be paid. The only proviso is you can't count on me from 8 a.m. until 5 p.m. 5 days a week, because there are times when I have to go to Bulgaria or I've got to go to Uppsala, Sweden, or someplace to do a job. And when I come back, I'm yours again. So over a 7-year time period, I worked my way through a general maintenance shop, a structure shop for sheet metal, flight control sheet metal, an engine shop, the mag shop, the prop shop, the paint shop, the fabric shop.
Wow.
And I accumulated the hours and worked with some of the best people in the business in South Florida. And so when I finally had accumulated in excess of 3,500 hours, I decided, all right, I'll now approach the FAA and receive the authorization to take the written tests. So I went to the local Flight Standards District office, and they said to me, wow, you could have been here years ago. And I said, I know that. But I've decided now I like the mechanical side of this so much that I'm going to take the tests, and when I finish, I'm going to open a maintenance business. So I went to the Baker School of Aeronautics in Nashville, Tennessee, for a finish-up course, which is really a preparatory course for the written tests. Took the 3 writtens, passed them all, and then I took the practical tests.
Like a check ride.
It is a check ride.
Doing metal sheet work and all this stuff, right?
Doing all the mechanical work. I took my test in a hangar at the Nashville airport at BNA. And this was a very large maintenance operation with a designated mechanical examiner. And this test took 2 days from start to finish. And I successfully passed all of the oral and the practical portion of the test after having taken the writtens. There are 3 writtens. There's a general exam which covers math and physics, basic electricity, and so on. And there's the test for the airframe, which covers wood construction, fabric covering, sheet metal, structures, and so on. And then the power plant exam, which covers both piston engines and also turbine engines. Successfully got through that, and I came back to South Florida and opened a maintenance business.
Okay.
Which I then built to in excess of $1 million a year in sales in the span of about 5 years. I've since sold that business. Once I became designated, I decided I've got to sell this thing. I can't run the 2 operations simultaneously and do well at both. So I had to pick one. So
what about pilot job? So if you've been involved in mechanic business, you couldn't fly like airline pilot or 135 pilot. Do you have experience as an airline pilot?
I do. At one point I decided I'd become a seaplane pilot.
Okay.
So I did my single engine seaplane rating. I liked it so much I decided to do my multi-engine seaplane rating. Then I started accumulating hours as a seaplane pilot, and then I accumulated enough time to become airline transport pilot rated in seaplanes. Shortly thereafter, I got thinking about maybe doing that for a while as a profession. So I applied for a job at Tropic Ocean Airlines in Fort Lauderdale. They fly caravans on floats, and I was hired by the company, and I went through all of the training and so on. But about the time I got through the training, I became selected as a DPE. So unfortunately, I had to resign before I really got going flying as a seaplane pilot for them. I kind of regret it, but I have to tell you that the DPE job is the most rewarding job I've had from the standpoint of the personal satisfaction of.
How many hours you had before you became a DPE?
When I initially applied to be a DPE, I had just in excess of 10,000 hours.
10,000 hours.
I now have something close to 30,000 hours.
How long do you work as a DPE?
I was originally selected in 2011.
2011.
I was designated in 2012, but there were some problems with the way the selection process was done, and I had to kind of go on hold for a while, and then I was redesignated in 2017. I was selected again. I went back to the academy and trained all over again.
Oh, I will ask you about the process. How you get these 10,000 hours? So you flew your personal plane all the time? Yes?
I flew as a commercial pilot from time to time. I did banner towing. I did about 1,000 hours of banner towing.
Wow, it's impressive.
I really enjoyed that. It's definitely dangerous, but it was a lot of fun.
I'm listening to you, and it looks for me like it's 5 different people live this life in a parallel.
Exactly.
The A&P and seaplanes and mechanical job and the flying banner tow, and all together it's like for the whole life. And you did everything in 20 years?
Yep.
Nice.
It's hard to believe.
It's hard to believe. It's really hard to believe.
Well, you know, I would go to the airport arrive at 7 in the morning and leave at 7 at night. Or many times I was flying well into the night. I did a lot of flight instruction, more than 10,000 hours of dual given.
Got it. Do you have helicopter rating, or you just airplanes?
I've flown helicopters, but I'm not rated in them. When I was a young boy, I designed and built my own helicopter.
Got it.
So I'm intimately familiar with how they work. And at one point I thought, I know a little bit about strength of materials and heat treatment, stress, and some of the forces on the parts, and I thought, I think I'm going to avoid these
It's too dangerous
machines. But lately I've been thinking, maybe I should have a go at it.
Got it. Tell me a little bit more about the process, how pilot can become a DPE, because I know it's really hard to get this status. I heard about this, but I never been involved. For example, how I can become a DPE.
To say that it's difficult to do is an understatement of biblical proportion. The DPE selection process is not really well known.
Mm-hmm.
It's an internal process that the FAA keeps
Like a secret?
confidential.
Okay.
From this standpoint, it's easy to apply to become a designated pilot examiner, but it's very difficult to become selected. And this is probably the one question that I hear the most of late. First off, it's a privilege to be a DPE, and I consider it to be an honor to be a DPE. It's a blessing. I think the simple answer to your question is you need to be an instructor of significance. That is to say, you need to have had a fair amount of experience as a flight instructor, and good experience, meaning that you're well regarded.
Mm-hmm.
I think you have to have good character. You have to be someone who has integrity. I think it's important that you're aware of the importance of rigor and structure. I know the agency values people who have experience in oversight, meaning that you've either been a 121 pilot or crew member, a 135 pilot or crew member, or a chief pilot or assistant chief pilot in a 141 structured school environment. because it's essential that you understand the importance of the regulation and how the agency runs. So if you don't have any of that experience, that's not going to help you. You need to have that experience.
Right.
But I can't say with certainty these are the 10 or 15 things that they're looking for, because I don't really know what that list is.
But the application process is open for everybody.
That's simple.
So everybody can go to FAA website, click the application, and
Yes.
send the application to be a DPE.
These days, I believe the portal is through what's called the designee management system. So you fill out an application, and the application has certain requirements.
Mm-hmm.
There's a certain number of hours that you have to have, a certain number of hours of dual instruction given. There are a few things that I do know are essential. You must hold a flight instructor certificate. You must be able to hold at least a third-class medical.
Mm-hmm.
Because, of course, the DPE, although we're not the pilot in command during a check ride,
but you have to have medical.
at any moment that the check ride has to be suspended,
Mm-hmm.
you become the pilot in command. And at that point, you must be rated, qualified,
and
current,
medical.
proficient, be able to take over.
What happens next? When you select it, you go into school, right? So you have like academy, FAA academy?
Yes.
Or?
Well, first you are potentially selected, and you're interviewed by the local Flight Standards District Office.
Mm-hmm.
In the old days, the DPEs were rigidly attached to a Flight Standards District Office.
Like a government people, right?
Yeah, you'd be attached to, in my case, FSDO 19, which is the South Florida FSDO, which was the roll-up of Miami and Fort Lauderdale FSDOs together. And you were restricted to the geographic service area of that FSDO. Now, we can do a check ride anywhere in the United States.
Right.
And in fact, we can do them anywhere in the world, provided that we're conducting a check ride for a U.S. certificate. To go back to your original question, once you're selected, you're interviewed by the FSDO, usually by a committee, and they make the selection as to whom they would like to have. For example, there may only be one position open. They might interview 3 people.
Mm-hmm.
And then once they've decided to make an offer to you to become a DPE, now you start a journey that could last as much as a year, becoming trained. You've got to go to the academy in Oklahoma City and go through a course. You have to take a written exam before you even get there. And then once you get there, you spend a week being trained in the business of conducting a check ride. And the culmination of the training is a mock check ride that's filmed and critiqued by academy instructors and your fellow classmates. It's usually a class of 30 to 35 people. And it's a really great experience because all of the people in the room are high-time, highly experienced people that cover the entire spectrum of flying. So you'll have 121 captains who are current or maybe just retired, 135 people, folks who were professional flight instructors during their career like me. So you have the whole gamut. And the interaction with all those people is a tremendous
It's giving you experience, right?
learning experience, yeah. I actually went 3 times. I went the first time I was picked, and then I went back to keep my currency. And then when I was picked the second time, I went back for a 3rd round of training. And I can say that I enjoyed each trip tremendously. And I met a lot of great people. And because I went 3 times, I now know from that experience several current DPEs in the Miami FSDO, as well as others around the country.
It's really actually interesting. FAA has some limited amount of DPEs per region, or it's unlimited. So if they have like 20 DPE, the FAA said, no, we don't need more DPE because 20 is good enough.
I think the simple answer to that question is the numbers of DPEs that they have are related to 2 things. One, the demand in a particular region, and more importantly, the span of control of the FSDO.
POI,
The
manager, right?
POI and in my case, my POI is a very experienced female pilot. She has some assistants, and the span of control of her and her assistants is limited. Most people don't realize it, but an aviation safety inspector has several hundred tasks that they are required to know how to do that are part of their job. And it takes a long time for them to be trained. They spend weeks at the academy in different modules getting trained. So the person who manages the DPEs has a myriad of other things that they do. And they are literally worked to the bone. I mean, they have no time. And that's the number one problem that I see that the FISDOs have. It's the reason they have designees. They have mechanical designees for maintenance inspectors. They've got aeromedical examiners as designees. They have pilot examiners. And it's how the agency expands its reach and its scope without having
additional people inside a FISDO.
I mean, they have a pretty large staff nationwide, but every single time I visit the FISDO, I never come away without the feeling that they're overworked and outgunned. They just don't have enough help. So our job as designees is to assist and to not make problems. That is to say, to do the job efficiently and to do it with a minimum of paperwork problems.
And as a DP, you are not an FAA person, right? So I mean, you're not a
We're
government.
not employees of
You're not an employee in a government agency.
No.
You're independent, like a businessman. You're an entrepreneur, actually, right?
Yeah, we literally are a contractor to the FAA.
But you're not paying to FAA, and FAA
Correct.
not paying to you.
That's right.
You just take the money from students, and that's it. This is a business.
Yeah,
right?
we are allowed to set the fee structure. I don't want to say that the FAA isn't concerned about the money side of what we do. I think, and I have seen examples over the years where examiners have not regulated themselves in terms of what they charge, and that's manifested itself in people being dismissed. I don't want to say that they don't care about the money. I think they care that the DPE gives good value for money and that they're charging a reasonable fee, but they don't want to get involved in trying to set the fees. Now, you've raised an interesting point, because one of the reasons people, I think, want to become a DPE is they look at the money and they think, well, the money is great.
It's easy money.
That's what they think. But having done this now full time for the last 2 years, I can tell you that this is a very difficult job and it's very demanding. When you follow the Airman Certification Standard strictly and you do all of the steps that are statutorily required of you to evaluate an applicant, it's a long day and you definitely earn your money. Now, what everyone can easily do is count the revenue that you produce. But what very few people are adept at, and having been trained originally as an accountant, I can tell you that they fail to think about the costs that are associated with conducting the activity. And all DPEs have costs associated with this. They have to have a computer, they have to have a printer, they have to have some kind of office space to do the paperwork that they're doing. They have to buy supplies, they buy paper, they buy ink. Many of us carry insurance to cover ourselves for this. And one small thing that most people don't realize is that the DPE has to log PIC time, a minimum of 60 hours per year of PIC time. We are not the PIC during a check ride.
Mm-hmm.
So none of that time is credited toward those 60 hours.
60 hours. Mm-hmm.
So you've got to buy 60 hours of time one way or another each year. And if you're really responsible as a DPE, and all of them are from my observation, if you're flying multi-check rides, you've got to fly multi-engine airplanes. I flew 3.5 hours of multi yesterday and flew some approaches down to minimums in order to keep myself current. You've got to be current and proficient. So I'm flying complex high-performance airplanes, turboprops, multi-engine turboprops, multi-engine piston to stay current and proficient. Because we all know the difference between legal currency and proficiency. And the DPE has the same problem that the applicant does. We've got to stay current and proficient. So we have costs, and nobody thinks about the costs. They only think about the top line revenue. You're basically a working stiff. You work a certain number of hours and you generate a certain cash flow per hour, and you've got a cost of goods sold, and at the end of all of it, there's a net profit that's good, but you're not going to retire on it. Let me put it to you that way. So, and the money is great, don't get me wrong, but you earn every dollar of it.
Yeah, I absolutely understand.
My wife says to me when I get home, I'm good for about 5 minutes on the pillow each night and I'm done, because I'm so tired at the end of a day. We're legally allowed to do 3 check rides in a day.
3, not 2.
3 now.
3. So how many check rides you do per month? About 50?
It depends on the month. The activity level goes up and down with the market, but in the summertime I'll do 2 check rides in a day on the days that I'm doing them. In the wintertime, when the sun goes down early, some of these rides the applicant has to have visual reference to the ground, so it's not possible for me to do 2 full check rides in a day unless it's an add-on. An add-on rating is much less time. But nonetheless, even those, I can spend 4 or 5 hours on an add-on rating between the statutory ground requirements and then watching the applicant pre-flight the aircraft and then going out and flying the maneuvers. I need a 5-hour block for say, a multi-engine add-on, whether it's private or commercial.
Is it any minimum requirements for check ride from FAA standards? Do they require to spend like 2 hours minimum for ground oral portion with student? It's not in
there's a guideline. They don't say to us strictly, look, we expect you to do X hours on this rating. What they do say to us is that you must strictly adhere to the ACS. You must never skip a step. That is inviolate.
Okay.
And so in my particular case, and I think for all the other examiners it's the same, I literally go step by step by step
from
down
ACS.
The ACS. Now, we are all required to conduct the check ride in accord with a plan of action, which is FAA speak for an outline. And this plan of action must include the current ACS for the rating that's involved. So one of the things I do every morning, the first thing I do is get a weather briefing. Now I'm good for 6 hours in front of me. The second thing I do is make sure there are no updates to the ACS that occurred last night, because I must follow the current version of the ACS. Okay. Then, if there is an update, I've got to annotate my plan of action, which is written and provided to the FAA every year.
Okay.
They review it and they sanction it, and each examiner has to write his or her own plan of action.
Okay.
So an applicant should expect a DPE to follow a plan of action, to be very thorough, and to strictly stick to the ACS. Those are the rules, and they're inviolate. You must stick to the ACS.
Okay.
And therefore, the timeline of what it's going to take is driven by 2 things. One, the magnitude of the ACS, which is always growing. And number 2, the speed at which the applicant answers the question. The DPE can be very efficient by posing a scenario-based question that incorporates multiple elements of the ACS. And the older, more experienced DPEs are very adept at putting a plurality of these things together in 1 or 2 scenarios, and they can cover a lot of real estate quickly. I try to do that too, and in my case, because I have so much experience flying GA airplanes, I will give scenarios that are based upon flights that I've taken in Alaska or in Mexico or in the British Virgin Islands or in the Dominican Republic, wherever I've been. So I'll roll together several things, and I'll even print out the ground track of previous flights and say, all right, here's the weather that's in front of you. You're on an IFR flight plan from here to Nassau. What do you see on this thing? And what are you going to do? What are your options? And so that way I can kind of probe the applicant's reasoning process and see that there's correlative ability there and that they have learned their lessons well. But again, I have to do it strictly in accord with the ACS. So
here's my question. Who controls the quality? I mean, you are designated pilot examiner, but you independent, right?
That's a great question.
Let's imagine I will say, hey Dave, I'll give you $3,000 instead of $800.
Oh, that's instant grounds for the loss of your certification.
Yes. No, I mean, I'm not talking about this straight. I mean, who controls you fair? You follow the rules. You're not forgiven some, I don't know, fault from student side. I mean,
I have this question all the time. The one thing that an applicant should be aware of is that the agency is deeply involved in the management of the quality and the quantity of what a DPE does. So a DPE is limited to 3 check rides in a day. That was really due to the pilot shortage crisis. It used to be 2. We can do an unlimited amount of retests during the day, but from a quality control standpoint, every DPE is observed at least once per annum by the local FSDO that they're attached to.
Okay.
They will observe the ground portion of a check ride, and they will observe the flight portion. Anytime a DPE wants to expand the scope of their capability, that involves observation. Again. Then there are tools within the designee management system to allow the FAA through the local FSDO and at the national level to determine that the quality level is being held there. And they do that by timers. They know when we start a ground session. They know when we start a flight, when we end the flight. The times are recorded and reported. They also do random quality control audits where they'll call an applicant. I could examine you today for an instrument rating, airplane, added rating to your private pilot certificate. You might hear 6 months from now, get a telephone call from a safety inspector who says, hey, we know you did your instrument rating with DPE Dave on such and such a day. Was he fair? Did he follow the ACS strictly? Did he skip any steps? Did he have you fly your flight plan, for example? That's a big one. So they will poll the flying public who have received these examinations to determine that the quality level is there. And they take that very seriously, and the DPEs are well aware of it. So there really is no way to cut a corner. And if you start cutting corners, they will get rid of you. I mean, that's the fastest way to lose your designation. Frankly, I don't really understand how people manage to do this, because it took me more than 20 years to get there.
No sense.
Why on earth would you do anything contrary to what the rules are? Now, I was an Eagle Scout as a young boy, so the Boy Scout thing is still in me. You just follow the rules.
Follow the rules.
It's really easy. It's like being in the military. You follow the rules and you avoid having extra duty.
Do you need to renew your designation?
Yes.
Every 2 years, every 1 year?
Your designation is subject to a retraining requirement every 2 years.
Every 2 years.
So you have continuing education. You've got to fly these 60 PIC hours every year, so you've got to stay current and proficient. You're subject to an audit. In fact, you're subject to an audit at any time. The agency can send any representative they want to come and observe any check ride. So the reason that we have to report through the designee management system what check ride we're doing. For example, tomorrow I have 2 check rides. I have a really long day tomorrow. It'll be probably 14 or 15 hours tomorrow. I'll get here at 6:30, I'll start at 7, and I'll probably finish at 7:30 or 8 o'clock tomorrow night. I know this already. The agency is aware of who is coming, when, what the rating is, and all of the technical information about that applicant. And their flight instructor. So they could send someone if they wanted to, unannounced. They could be here at the door at 7 a.m. and they have the right to sit and observe, which I'm okay with. I'm ready for them on any given day, but the applicant, of course, can become very nervous.
Another question, and the same about the quality. It was in my experience personal, and I know about this from my personal view and from other students. If I disagree, for example, with my pink slip, I failed the check ride, you gave me pink slip, I said, what's going on? I did everything right, I did all maneuvers perfectly.
Yep.
He never told me during the flight it was wrong. We landed and he gave me the pink slip.
Here's what the rule is. The rule is this. Each individual task in the ACS on the flying side, it's the same on the ground. If that task is not performed satisfactorily, the DPE is required to inform the applicant at that moment that this is unsatisfactory. The way in which this is told, in my experience, is more important than the actual reality of an unsatisfactory result. How it's said greatly impacts the psyche of the applicant. And so in a flying scenario where that person has sole control of the aircraft and is the PIC, the manner in which this is told is really critical to everybody's safety. There's a lot of pressure on these young people, or even an older applicant. They all want to be successful. But the rule is, at that moment I have to say to you, Andrey, unfortunately, this particular steep turn was not satisfactory. You did not finish on your heading within 10 degrees, or you were off altitude by more than 100 feet, and therefore it is outside the standard and it is unsatisfactory. Here's the question I get all the time, or not all the time, but a few times. Can I do another one right away? Unfortunately not. I'm not allowed to let you repeat the maneuver unless you were distracted by something that you didn't control. Traffic call, a
ATC
call from
call.
the tower, a near bird strike, something like that. Then I can say this maneuver was disrupted by something outside of the applicant's control, and now you can do it again. And in that setting, I usually have them move on to something else and then come back to that. But you must inform the applicant. It's the same on the ground. And at that moment, on the ground or in the air, you must give the applicant the option of continuing or stopping.
Or discontinue.
For example, some people are so upset with themselves about not doing their accuracy power off 180 landing that they're not capable of doing well going forward, and they rightfully execute their PIC decision to stop. I normally say to them, look, I recommend you continue. Usually once they break that barrier, they're good for the rest of the ride. It's very rare for them not to be successful moving forward from that point. And I've had all kinds of different emotions expressed at that moment. And so I always try to calmly bring everybody back to a sense of tranquility moving forward. Because we want you to be successful. But we're the glass gatekeeper. And I tell people, it pains me as much as it pains you to having maybe done this short field landing not satisfactorily, but I can't unsee it. You were outside the standard, and therefore we have to call that unsatisfactory and just come back on another day. So for my part, what I try to do with the applicants is encourage them to go get the retraining immediately, get your 6149 endorsement, and come back within 1, 2, 3 days and finish your rating so that it's not grinding on you for a week or 2 weeks. That to me is worse than the event of having something unsatisfactory. Today I had a fellow who was disturbed by a flock of 100 egrets. He was doing his soft field landing, commercial pilot rating.
And flock?
He had a flock of 100 egrets come, and it completely destroyed his concentration, and his landing was flat. He said to me, "I know that's unsatisfactory." I said, "That's true. But in this particular case, the flock of egrets disturbed you such that you no longer were really able to focus. So we're going to do that one again after we do all the other takeoffs and landings." So I had him do it at the end of the pattern work, and then we went out to do his air work, which was very good. And he satisfactorily met the ACS requirements, and I issued him his commercial pilot certificate.
Good. 2 complicated questions.
Okay.
If you're not really tired. The first one, can you forgive one maneuvers outside of ACS if everything else is perfect? For example, the person flying perfectly on a steep turn, he out of 120 feet instead of 100 feet.
If they're outside of the standard, we have to say it's unsatisfactory.
Yeah. Okay.
Now, the examiners have a tremendous amount of discretion. For example, let's say that the winds are howling and the applicant decides to fly. That definitely affects
the quality of the
your
flight.
judgment. Now, I tell people all the time, if the examiner doesn't see this deviation, did it happen? That's another problem that we have. You can't call something unsatisfactory that you didn't see. Conversely, you can't call something satisfactory that you didn't see. So the examiner actually is busy the whole time because I've got 2 things or 3 things to do all the time. I've got to look for traffic, I've got to watch the applicant, and I've got to go through my plan of action and make sure I don't skip a step. So I'm just as busy in the cockpit as they are, maybe busier. So maybe I've taken my eyes off you for a moment and you dip under the standard, but you come back into it. If you start and finish within the standard and I haven't seen you go out of the standard, I haven't seen you go out of the standard. If I've seen it, as one safety inspector said to me years ago, a mechanical safety inspector, I'll never forget this, an excellent A&P mechanic, a female. She said, "Dave, stop the car." We were driving across the airport. I said, "Okay." She said, "I just saw something that I can't unsee. You can't stay here with me. I'm getting out of the car and going over there. You go back to your office and I'll meet you there." So I tell the applicants the same thing. I can't unsee this.
Got it.
The truth is the truth.
Few more questions, I will give you rest. You have your personal score as a DP, like we do, right? 141 school should be more than 80% to be renewed without additional inspection. You have your personal score, probably.
They do keep track of our pass-fail rate. I don't actually keep track of my own pass-fail rate. The last time I had a review, I asked what it was. And I told them, look, I literally have no idea. I try to come each day to the job with a clean slate. And I don't care what happened yesterday. I'm just about that applicant today. And one of the things that the fee covers is my full and undivided attention. You own that time with me for your check ride, and you should expect that I'm focused exclusively on that. I'm not really thinking about what happened yesterday. I'm not thinking about how many people unsatted part 61, 141.
Okay.
I'm just looking at you as you're the first commercial pilot check ride I've ever done.
Next question. I'm trying to accelerate and speed up because you have check ride tomorrow morning. About international students. I know you have an authority to evaluate English level proficiency, right?
Yes and
As
no.
a DPE, you can say, hey, you're not English proficient. I will not issue license for you because you cannot speak in English good enough.
That's not really true. Here's how it works. If I have a question about the English language capability of an applicant, I am to send them to the FSDO for an English proficiency test. The DPE is not the final arbiter of whether or not someone is English proficient. If the DPE has a question about the English proficiency, we are to check a particular box in the examination process, the 8710-1 review, and return the applicant to the FSDO. Now, because I was a field service engineer for 35 years in foreign countries, transferring chemical process technology and machine technology for manufacturing plastic containers and insulation products to foreigners, my approach to dealing with someone for whom English is a second language has been developed over 35 years. So I'm very patient waiting for the answer. And I'm very careful to speak slowly and clearly and use very simple words because I want the applicant to be comfortable and to fully understand the question. So my check rides in those scenarios take longer, but I don't care how long it takes because what I care about is, do you have the minimum aeronautical knowledge and muscle memory motor skill to safely operate the aircraft in the National Airspace System, either as a pleasure flyer or for compensation as a commercial pilot?
If you have any concern about English level, is it pink slip, disapproval, or you just say, hey,
No.
it's not a check ride, go to the FSDO, and then you come back
We
and
suspend the ride.
Suspend the ride.
And they go to the FSDO for that evaluation.
Perfect.
We can make that determination that should be done at the beginning of the check ride or at the end of the check ride. It's possible before we issue a notice of disapproval, a letter of discontinuance, or a temporary airman certificate, we have the opportunity to check that box. Now, I've examined dozens and dozens of applicants who speak a plethora of different languages. I have not had someone yet who's come to me whose English language proficiency has been sufficiently deficient that I check that box.
Okay.
But I will tell you this, I'm not afraid to check the box because at the end of the day, it's about the safety of you operating the Learjet you fly and me operating one of these little Cessnas
airplanes
out there in the practice area. So it's all about safety.
Okay. When applicant shows up in your office, you have some personal communication and personal perception of this person. Is it important for you how people, for example, white shirt, shoes, tie, professional look, or it's gonna be like sandals, shorts, t-shirt?
I can't judge someone by their appearance. You know that there's a famous English saying, you can't judge a book by its cover.
Okay.
I've met people who looked very disheveled who were absolutely stunningly brilliant. And I've met other people who looked like they stepped off a runway in Paris from a fashion show who would have had trouble finding the rental car in the parking lot. You never know. So I really don't judge people by what they look. I have to strictly be interested in their aeronautical knowledge and their flying ability, and that's it. Now, obviously, when I see a commercial pilot applicant who's come in dressed professionally, it's a good presentation. And for my part, I come to the check ride every day in a white shirt and a tie.
I see you every day like this.
Even
when you work in your airplane.
That's true. Now, for me, it's a sign of respect to the applicant. I remember the effort, the money, the time, the struggle that it takes to become prepared for a rating. I want to show each and every applicant the highest level of respect. And so I want to present myself in a professional manner as I'm representing the FAA. And I want the best face forward for each and every applicant. I want them to feel comfortable, and I want them to feel that they're respected. So my boss has told me that I don't have to wear a tie every day, but I really feel that I should. So I do.
Okay. Do you believe it's some people who cannot fly airplane? Who cannot be trained to fly at all?
In my flying career and instructing career, I only ever ran into one or two people that I thought might not be able to persevere, but in the end they did. So I personally have never had a student that I had to give up on. Mm-hmm. Usually they give up because they decide it's not for me. And flying is not for everyone. It takes a lot of commitment to achieve a certificate. If you want to have a pilot certificate, you're going to work very hard. This is not like buying a jet ski and you just go out and play on the ocean. This requires a long-term commitment, effort, financial investment. And again, that's why I try to respect, and I do respect every one of them when they arrive, because they have made that investment. You can't get to my desk for a check ride without having a certificated flight instructor make a legal endorsement that says you're capable of passing the check ride. That means you've done the work.
Yep.
So,
how do you see the aviation in the future in the next 10 years?
I think it's going to continue to expand because it's the most efficient way to move people from one location to another over long distances. The high-speed trains are great in Western Europe and elsewhere around the world. Ocean-going vessels are great. You know, each mode of transportation has its ultimate efficiency. For example, barges are tremendously efficient for moving natural raw materials, but not so good for moving people. So I see air travel continuing to expand, continuing to become more financially cost efficient, and therefore the need for pilots will continue. I also see a deeper level of automation. For example,
that was my question. What's going to happen in 20, 30 years? Do you see the pilot still in the cockpit in 30 years perspective?
I see a pilot there as a safety system to the automated machinery. I built distributed process control systems to operate complex chemical processes making thermoplastic foams. And these computers monitored 500 to 1,000 different measurements and various control loops. But man-made machines break, and certain subsystems break. And when you've got 200, 300, 400 souls on board, you really need the ultimate computer in the front, and that's the human mind. There's no computer that is more sophisticated than the human brain that God created.
So you don't believe we're going to fly Airbus 420 in the next 15, 20 years with zero pilot in the cockpit?
No, I don't believe that that's a risk that mankind will be willing to take.
Okay, that's a good answer. I just would like to see your opinion.
It's a great question. I think if you're involved in process control at all, and you get involved in building machinery that runs other machinery, you quickly understand how easy it is for a transistor to fail, a diode to fail, a capacitor to fail, and that can be fatal. So you need the human in the loop to say, this machine is failing, I'm now going to disconnect the autopilot and hand fly this machine to a successful conclusion of this flight.
Do you feel new applicant is different from the applicant 20 years ago, 40 years ago, 50 years ago? I'm trying to put it in another world. In the golden age of aviation, like 50s, 60s, 70s, it was romantic time. Everybody wants to fly. I was born in 79, but I was born with my dream to be a pilot since my childhood. Now I think it's a little bit different because the people is more involved in the TikTok, IT business and different financial businesses. And when you see, oh, I dream to be a pilot, and sometimes, really? So what do you think about new generation pilots who is going to this profession? If it's still the same romantic people like before, or it's kind of different people?
Well, first off, flying has always been a very expensive endeavor. In order to ensure the safety, the cost of the machinery has always been relatively high. So that's a somewhat limiting thing for pleasure flying. The quality of the pilot applicants today, I believe, is actually better than we had in the past for several reasons, but some that I'd like you to consider are the following. We're in an information age now, and pilot candidates and current pilots today have a wealth of digital devices at their disposal that make flying safer and allow them to learn to a much higher standard. For example, the internet allows you access to a variety of training tools and technical information that in the past was difficult to get access. So I see pilot applicants better trained with better tools and access to better information. So the future looks even better looking out forward than it is today. And today is really wonderful. The weather tools that you have today, the flight planning tools, the situational awareness that you've got in the cockpit, the automation that's available, and the cost of it is a fraction of what it was in the past.
Yeah, this is about technology. What about people, soul? Is it the same people like 40 years ago?
I think you'll always have a certain percentage of people who find the notion of flying to be very attractive to them. Some of the best pilots are, in fact, artisans. Musicians typically make excellent pilots because of their understanding of signature and timing. And those applicants bring a different perspective to the examination table than, let's say, the professional engineer or the doctor or the lawyer. I've seen all of them as applicants in the last 2 years, and it's wonderful to see the array of people who are fascinated with and interested in flying. It's one of the great perks of this job, the people. But I'd say that the people are actually just as good, or in many ways potentially better than the past, because they have better tools. My pilot training handbook that I had as a young boy, the weather handbook I can recall was about 3/8 of an inch thick. Now it's an inch. You know, it's a whole different world. So I think the best actually is in front of us, not behind us.
Yeah. Give me the best advice for student, for applicant before check ride. Your best advice to applicant who will show up tomorrow at 6:30.
Very simply, the night before a check ride, get a good night's sleep. Cramming for the test the night before is not going to help you. You either know it or you don't. Be honest with yourself. Follow the ACS strictly. Go through the sections and ask yourself, am I prepared? You know in your own mind's eye, in your heart of hearts, where you're weak. Go ahead and concentrate on those weak areas, but strictly stick to the ACS, because that's the measurement metric that we're to use only, exclusively. So if you study the ACS, follow the curriculum that the flight school has for you, and you're honest with yourself and you feel comfortable, well, then you'll be prepared. Now, with respect to the written test, the questions that you may have had trouble with, make sure that you look at those, because we are required to look at the written test. I highlight each ACS plan of action that I have of those questions that you missed. And wherever there's duplicity, I'll try to simplify it, but I'm going to have to ask you about those subject areas during the ground portion and during the flight portion. So expect that that will come up. You need to make sure you review that. But the time to review it is not the night before or that morning before you come in. Get a good night's sleep and be well rested.
Good.
You don't have to be perfect. Understand this. The standard is not perfection. The standard is safe.
Safe.
And the standard is that you have the minimum aeronautical knowledge. Our job is to probe your knowledge and make sure that that statement's true. And if it is, then it's will result in a temporary airman certificate on the day. And if it isn't, and we have to send you back for more training, it's not the end of the world. It's not cancer. You go back, you get the remedial training, and come back, and that particular subject is covered again, and you move forward.
The best advice for applicant after check ride, when he passed and you issue the certificate, your best advice for him for the next life?
I always give them an outline of what they might look at going forward for the next rating. I take the time to debrief them on how they did, and then I take some time and talk to them about what the FAA recommended materials are for your next rating, what books you should have access to. Most of them, all of them are available online. So I'll give them that list, I'll write it down on an index card for them and hand it to them. I recommend to every person after they pass their check ride, take a little break, go to the flight school, rent the airplanes, fly a bit, get your instrument ticket wet, grab your favorite instructor and go fly into some weather. Go test your personal minimums, set them, use them, go out there and prove to yourself that you can do it beyond the one check ride. And then once you've gotten a little bit of flying in, then continue in the learning doing loop and move forward.
Do you remember the funniest or just curious case during your check ride? Something you can remember for a long time?
I think the thing that I always remember the most for each applicant is the feeling of relief. The most satisfying moments for me have been applicants that I've seen for multiple check rides that maybe were getting discouraged. And I took the time to try to encourage them. I recently had a young woman whose family owns an airline, and she was going to stop after her instrument check ride. And I explained to her that we need as many women as we can have in aviation and that she shouldn't stop there. She had had a bad check ride experience on her private check ride. And I said to her, look, I think you should go on and do the commercial single and do the commercial multi. Forget about what happened in the past. Every day's a new day. In order for you to have credibility at the airline, you need to have the ratings. So please reconsider your decision, and I'd be thrilled to have you come back and do your commercial check rides. In fact, she did that and now is going to go to work on her type rating in the 737. So that was a particularly rewarding success story. I heard from her father, who's the CEO of the airline. He wrote me a nice note thanking me for kind of giving her a pep talk. But I knew she had it in her, and it would have been a tragedy for her to stop. I had another young fellow from Ecuador recently, maybe within the last year, who was kind of running out of money, running out of time, and he was unsatisfactory on the ground portion of his check ride. And I spent a fair amount of time with him counseling him on what he needed to study, and I put him in touch with an instructor who could help him, and he got the remedial training he needed, came back to me about maybe a month later, and sailed through the check ride with flying colors. I knew the material, and it was like a whole different person. So those are just two small examples of the reward that you get in this job. Occasionally some funny things will happen, but not so much on the check rides because everybody's so keyed up. But the other day I was listening to a fellow call for flight following. He was at the FBO on the east end of the field, and he wanted the ground controller to arrange a squawk code for him. He wanted flight following from here to Boca Raton, which is around 10 or 12 miles. And someone keyed up and said to him, just keep the water on the right and the land on the left, and look out the left window as you go north.
This is a great story. This is what I expected.
Right.
My last question, we're done. What is your hobby besides aviation? Do you have any hobby?
I do. I built competition model airplanes from the time of maybe age 10 until the year 2000. I designed and built hundreds of model airplanes of all different kinds. In fact, here are a couple of pictures of some model airplanes that I built.
But this is about aviation. Do you have any hobbies beside the aviation?
Well, I really don't. I've been totally immersed in aviation all my life.
So you're 100% infected with aviation?
There's no doubt about it. I built plastic models as a kid, and then flying models of rubber-powered, and then alcohol-powered models, diesel-powered models, control line models, radio-controlled models. I literally have been immersed in aviation as far back as I can remember. It's all I've really cared about.
So there is no any vaccine?
Well, I traveled all over the world as a field service engineer, so you might say my hobby was traveling, but it was my job. So I saw the pyramids, I saw the Sphinx, I saw all manner of things all over the world, but I always had some connection to aviation. So wherever I went, I would fly with local people who worked in the plants. It used to drive my father crazy because he'd say to me, no matter where we go, Dave, there's always somebody who wants to fly with you or fly model airplanes with you. And it seems like I can't get away from these airplanes. No matter what I do, it's all airplanes all the time.
Yeah.
And he was right. So I guess I really do love it. And I still am designing things. I'm designing instrument panels, or I just did the entire electrical system redesign of this Skyhawk over the Christmas vacation with my wife.
I saw you on Instagram, so you left for a couple of days, right? So you visited some places.
That's it. Now my hobby, I guess, is going to have to be, and I'm happy to do it, my wife wants me to fly her around. So her idea is that I kind of reduce my workload a little bit and fly her to various locations. So,
how long are you going to be a DPE, or you don't have any specific plans? As long as I'm having fun doing it, and I'm able to do it physically, and the FSDO wants me, I'll be happy to do it. I love this job more than any other job I've ever had. It is one of the toughest jobs I've ever had, but it's one of the most rewarding jobs. So it's a privilege, it's an honor, it's a blessing, and it's real work. It is not an easy job. I know.
But it's well worth it.
Dave, thank you so much. I wish you the long life, and stay healthy and do whatever you like to do.
I really appreciate that, Andrey. Thanks for
your
coming
time.
over.
Thanks for your time. I really apologize it took so long, but
it doesn't matter.
It's a lot. a lot of interesting questions, and I'm happy you found the time for me.
I didn't have a schedule for it. For myself, I'm happy to spend as much time as you like. And I tell people when they finish their rating, you're always welcome here. Come here and immerse yourself in aviation with the people that I have here. My house is your house, so just come and play.
Thank you so much.
And learn and have fun.
Thanks for your help.